Welcome to Integration Nation for Allison Sullivan and Associates Integrative Mental Health Practice. I'm Dee Daniels. We are going to get up in your head today.
As if we don't do that every time.
You know, that's true. True story, Allison.
I do it all day, every day.
True story. Today
we're doing it at my house today.
You know, this is so fun that we're in the cozy comfort of your house today and the dogs are here.
Yeah, it's a little wacky. It's a little weird of a vibe for me.
I
like,
love
oh,
it.
Daisy Doo.
I love it. I have had dog kisses this whole time we've been doing recording this afternoon. I love it. And I love sitting out and looking at your beautiful backyard.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It is kind of zen here.
It is. It's making me feel very nice. And I can't think of a better place for us to be and a better topic for us to be talking about than getting maybe in the protective mode of your own headspace.
Yes. We're going to talk about all things related to protecting your headspace today. And it's related to self-care. It's related to boundary setting. However, it's a little different in that we are really actually literally talking about the space in your head and how to really implement some things, utilize some tools to protect that space, to make sure you're being intentional about what's going in and why it's going in there and how much bandwidth you really have.
I cannot think of a better way to put all of that. I mean, how much you're letting in and what you're doing with it, how often and how it's affecting you. And
how it's affecting you, because when we're on autopilot with all that stuff, all of a sudden we can find ourselves in a place where our head is super crowded. We feel like we're spinning out. We feel like we can't think about one more thing. And so when we learn how to protect our head space, we can prevent that from happening. So this is another preventative medicine podcast.
It's fantastic. I mean, really, this is just one of many in our episode list that you can find at allisonsintegrativehealth.org. And you click on Integration Nation, it'll take you right to the page for the podcast. And you'll see all of these fantastic episodes that we've done before this one. And you know, there is a common theme in so many of our episodes, you know, a lot of them going back to being true to yourself and empowering yourself.
Yes.
And finding that place of safety within your own thinking.
Yes. And the reason I'm doing this podcast is because our therapy practice does that integratively, and that's important. And the podcast helps to educate people about what we mean by integrative mental health. And it also reduces barriers to accessing information about integrative mental health, which is super important. All of those themes run throughout what we do, but we look at a person as their mind and body as one bidirectional system, and we pull in all kinds of complementary therapies, adjunctive therapies to treat a person holistically, mind, body, and spirit, which is a big reason I am delighted that we are in part sponsored by Dragonfly Yoga Studio, that everyone can find at dragonflyyogafred.com, because they practice with that same mindset. From the moment you walk into Dragonfly Yoga Studio, you realize that it is a community, it is a safe community, and it is also a serious yoga studio to dive into a yoga practice for the first time, to dive deeper into your yoga practice, to really have a safe place to connect with yourself, mind, body through yoga. It's full of individualized classes for the beginner, the intermediary, the advanced practitioner. They have workshops that literally span every aspect of a yoga practice. It's amazing. When you go on their website, again at dragonflyyogafred.com, you'll see all that they have to offer, and you'll see the resumes of the amazing teachers there. The wonderful thing about that is they are all committed to continuing to develop the community there. So from the first time someone walks in, if you're considering when you're listening to this about trying Dragonfly Yoga, from the first time you walk in, you will be met personally and oriented as to how to begin to practice yoga in that space.
DragonflyYogaFred.com. They even offer some free classes as well, so you can check that out.
Absolutely. And the community service element and the outreach that they do for the community, not only within the studio, but in the community surrounding the studio, is unmatched by the other yoga studios around.
Yeah, and we're so proud to have them on as part of our sponsor here at Integration Nation. We appreciate that so much. And of course, we would love for you to share this podcast with other people. And if you stop by Dragonfly, tell them you heard about them right here on Integration Nation. So that would be a great way when you walk in, just say, hey, I heard about you from Integration Nation and want to try you out. And I heard you were great and Allison couldn't give you enough praise. And so here I am. They would love to hear that.
They absolutely would, or even shoot them an email. When you go to the website, just email to info@dragonflyyogafred.com and they will get back with you and answer all of your questions.
All right, let's get in our head for a minute.
Let's do it. Let's get up in our head.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to start with a quote from a Buddhist monk, Shantideva. Cool name, isn't it?
Love that, yes.
Mind is the seed of the world's joy and the remedy for its suffering. Which really, when you absorb that quote, you begin to understand that if you can make peace with your mind, if you can learn how to settle it, to clear it, it really is the greatest empowerment that you can experience. And we are all about empowerment at Integration Nation and at the practice. So protecting your headspace is all about making peace with your mind.
And I feel like in doing that, we probably have some self-awareness that needs to happen.
Yes, absolutely. So there's some, when I was thinking about doing this, that actually came from a personal experience that I found myself in. And I thought, you know what, if I'm going through this right now and I'm thinking about it in this way, I think this would be a useful topic to talk about. So recently I have been at a place where our family, the practice, myself individually, there's been just a lot going on.
Right.
Lots of events, lots of emotional circumstances, lots of expansion stuff, just a ton of stuff going on. Some stuff going on with me physically that needed to be attended to. So a ton of stuff like I'm sure no one can relate to who's listening to this.
Not any of us. Not at all.
I mean, and I'm fairly certain the majority of people who are listening to this podcast know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Where there's just so much going on all fronts of your life.
Yes. Okay,
so that's where I found myself, and I started to really feel very crowded in my head, very crowded. And so I had this thought one day, I need to get more intentional about protecting my headspace.
I feel like when I've been in those places, which I have been, I have had to almost schedule myself in a better way. Like, how much TV am I going to watch?
Yes.
How much am I going to be on my phone? Or how late at night am I going to be on my phone? I've had to even break it down. And that may sound too detailed for some people, but I have had to, because those little things that I feel like that you don't think about, they sneak up on you.
It matters because everything that we're ingesting, that we're reading, that we're watching, that we're participating in is taking up headspace. Mm-hmm. It's taking up heart space. It's taking up space. I think about this sometimes. I'm not super computer literate. All you have to do is ask Haley, email Haley, and she'll tell you. My challenge is there. But I think about that with, space on your hard drive.
Yeah.
Space in working memory, space, all that kind of stuff. We can't just dump limitless amounts of stuff in our head and think that it's not going to feel crowded. We're not going to feel distracted. We're not going to feel foggy, unclear, scattered, all of the above. Mm-hmm. So it really is about, I kind of pulled out a couple of points to make about this, but it is really a fundamental part of making peace with our mind when we really get intentional about, okay, because I'm in these circumstances, I need to protect my headspace in these specific ways.
So when you are maybe trying to set up some new filters in your life and protect that headspace, how do we go about doing that? I mean, do you suggest that, we maybe get aware about how long we're on our phone, or
Yes.
Maybe how much news we're watching or listening to,
Okay.
because that can be overwhelming. A lot of bad news, from the television, or too much negativity, or that sort of thing.
Absolutely. So let me just start by talking about a few of the things that I decided to put in place, and then we'll talk about the steps necessary for people to figure out how to do that. And let me just say, what we're talking about is related to self-care. In particular, it's psychological self-care, and it is related to boundary setting. So if you want more reinforcement or a deeper understanding about what we're talking about, go back and listen to our podcast episode on self-care, and go back and listen to the boundary episode that we did, because it'll reinforce everything that we're talking about today. So what I decided to do to protect my headspace was I had to limit when I was looking at email, how many times I was looking at email during the day, both personal email and business email.
Right.
I also decided that I was going to limit the amount of not only news I was reading, but educational stuff that I was reading. I am almost constantly consuming information, reading about research that's going on, understanding aspects of things that we're delving into in the practice, continually, which is really fun and rewarding and great, and the practice benefits from it. But given where I was at this particular time, I needed to put some parameters about how much of that information was going in. I also decided to back away from some group texts that I was a part of, because I was finding that it was doing two things. It was keeping my headspace super crowded. It was also interfering, I think, with deeper connections with people, because it would kind of those little tiny connections were prohibiting deeper connections. And I think that might be a podcast episode we delve into separately down the road. In addition to that, I had to decide how much TV I was going to watch and why I was watching it. Because all of those things we consume take up headspace. And so when I decided to put some tighter boundaries around those things, I also decided to then implement some other things, some additional self-care practices to further protect my headspace. More meditation time, more quiet time out in nature, more time in my hammock.
Yeah.
Without a book, without an agenda, looking at the trees, listening to the birds.
Yeah.
Just more time to allow my head to just be. And to really protect it. I mean, when I was doing those things, it felt like I kind of had my arm around my head, like, I've got you. I'm not going to let too much get in here.
Right.
I'm paying attention to what is getting in here, and I'm giving you some rest.
I think a lot of times we don't pay attention to that. And we oftentimes, I have done this too, sort of thought of those things as a nice distraction from reality. When in fact, those things in itself are doing something and adding noise and busyness to our head.
Noise and busyness, yes. And the information that is available to us today is so miraculous and immensely important for evolution, for innovation, for creativity, and left unchecked, wow. I mean, who hasn't gone into an internet tunnel so wide and so deep that when you come back up, you're like, what just happened?
What has been going on for the last 4 hours?
What just happened? And that, when I do that, that stuff goes in my head, and the gears spin and the wheels spin. So those are the very specific ways that I chose to protect my headspace. during this recent kind of perfect storm of busyness. All right, so let's talk about the component parts that people need to be able to examine, how do I protect my headspace? Well, the first is self-awareness. We need to be aware of how we're responding, how we're feeling, what's going on. If we don't have self-awareness, it's going to be next to impossible for us to figure out really effective ways to protect our headspace.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, so I know for myself that my gears will start spinning the second I'm ingesting something, some news, some article, something. My gears are going to start turning. So that was why I knew I needed to look at that first.
So for those of us who on occasion might say, I don't spend 2 hours looking at Instagram. Let's just get real with ourselves.
Yes, and like we've talked about before, a lot of devices tell you how much screen time you've had every day. So you can track how much screen time you have.
Right. Or if you're trying to split that up to make yourself look better to yourself.
Between devices.
Let me tell you, I've also been there. So if you're trying to say, no, I was only on Instagram for 8 minutes, and then I was on Facebook for 7 minutes, and then I did a circle around the house, and then I sat down and read 17 articles, and then I watched X amount of this, even splitting it up. It's much noise.
So much in there. Okay, so there are 3 particular things I think people can focus on. Well, focus is actually one of them. People can pay attention to develop self-awareness. Time, attention, and focus.
Love that.
Okay, so the obstacles, I'm going to go over the obstacles and then we'll go back to them. The obstacles to self-awareness can be instant gratification, judgment, and distraction. All right, so let's go back to the time, attention, and focus. Basically, what that means is what I was describing a few minutes ago. It means we have to take the time to really pay attention to what's going on in our head. Is our head buzzing constantly? Are our thoughts really going pretty quickly? Are we moving from one thing to another? And we have to really focus on what's going on in our bodies as a result of that. So when we can do that, when we can just kind of check in with ourselves almost as automatically as we do Instagram, we can start to develop self-awareness. We can start to learn things like, oh, when I'm exposed to this much news, I start to feel jittery. I start to lose my train of thought. I start to jump from one thing to another. That's a clue that you're developing some self-awareness.
Right.
Now, the instant gratification, the self-judgment, and the distraction, those are obvious obstacles. If we're keeping ourselves so distracted, there's no way we can understand anything about how we're ingesting things and how crowded our head is getting. If we need instant gratification, or if we're kind of prioritizing instant gratification, we're not going to take the attention and the time to take the attention that we need to develop self-awareness. And if we judge ourselves about what we're finding, it's going to really inhibit the growth of our self-awareness because we're going to want to avoid judgment. So we won't look.
That's so true. It's true because once you start looking at it, then you start judging it.
Yes.
Then you're not going to go look at it anymore.
Right. So this is a time. So one of our first episodes that we did in season 1, I think it was called Mindful Matters, is an introduction to mindfulness and mindfulness-based principles. And non-judgment is a big part of that. So it might help people who are listening to this to get kind of a primer on mindfulness to go listen to that, because non-judgment is really fundamental to developing self-awareness. You have to be able to get in there and kind of explore, kind of like looking through a junk drawer. If you're going to judge every single thing that you find in your junk drawer, you're not going to clean out your junk drawer.
No, you're going to avoid cleaning out your junk drawer for 17 years.
17 years. And then when you try and open it and you can't open it and you're like, no, see, I shouldn't have opened it.
Yes. So true. You can't judge what's going on in there. You have to be curious.
You have to be curious, and you have to say, okay, well, it's time. I just want to see what's in here, because then when I know what's in here, I can decide where I want to put it or if I want to keep it.
Yeah. I went through some things in the garage a couple of weeks ago that I've had in there a little too long. You know, a couple of bins, a couple of bags. You know what I mean?
No, I can't relate to that at all.
I know. And so I went through those, and I left the garage with about 90% of it going to Goodwill or, you know, some other place. A couple of things just going to the recycle bin. But I left thinking to myself, gosh, that feels good.
Exactly.
Now, in the midst of it, there were moments of like, oh, I probably should have done this sooner. And why did I hang on to this? But then I kept catching myself. So I'd stop and I'd actually feel the relief of going through it and the joy of
you'd
that.
Focus and you'd turn your attention and focus on the task at hand.
Right.
That's exactly what we're talking about to develop self-awareness. You have to be able to acknowledge, okay, I see the judging, and then turn your attention and focus back to what else is there. What else is going on in me?
Did we already talk about the context specific?
No, that's what happens next with self-awareness. So I think we, most of us, myself included, want a one-size-fits-all approach. So, okay, yeah, I've got the self-awareness. Now I'm going to develop the method to protect my headspace through whatever is going on. That's not really how it works. It's really context specific. So depending on what's going on in your life, depending on, the moving parts, the moving pieces, that's going to inform what you need to do to protect your headspace.
So depending on like the situation or like what, like you were in a very busy time.
And all fronts.
Yes.
All fronts. Now let's say there's a ton of stuff going on at work that's really taking up a lot of space in their head.
Right.
So they're going to want to focus the aspects of protecting their headspace based on just that one front.
Right. Because maybe you watching TV at home will not help that work heaviness time. You maybe, so it has to be maybe something that you tie into.
Right. Or
the situation.
So if there's a ton of stuff going on at work, maybe you're really specific about when you leave work and not bringing things home.
Oh, yes.
But maybe when you're at home with your family, watching movies or watching Netflix or doing things like that isn't creating a crowded headspace. Maybe that is a way that you're decompressing. That's where the self-awareness is so vital, because maybe it is just around the work that you need to protect your headspace. If work is interfering with every aspect of your life, and crowding out all the other things, and protecting your headspace really is just creating a space in your head for work.
Yeah, and maybe you used to check email while you were at home, and
you don't.
And now you don't. Maybe that's how you do it.
Right. Maybe that's how you do it. Okay. So the third point is related to that, in that we need to be able to refine this because it's dynamic. So as our awareness evolves, our needs change. That's really important. As our awareness about ourselves and how we show up in our lives changes and we evolve, because we have more tools, we have different needs, all of that, then that is going to change what kind of protection we need and how we are ingesting what we're ingesting too. Because we might just get better at sorting, at filtering, at all kinds of things that prevent us from getting into a place where we have to do a ton of stuff to protect our headspace. We might find ourselves over time where we get to a place where we can do some daily things to protect our headspace.
Are you ready for Q&A?
I'm ready for Q&A.
Xander wrote us a question that I just thought was a really powerful question. He said he was going to therapy for the first time, has never gone to therapy. One of the biggest concerns he had was about feeling embarrassed about sharing all of his life story in a therapy office. I think this is something we all struggle with when you're going to a therapist office for the first time. It can be a bit daunting. His question was, sometimes I feel like I'm going in and I'm the only one with this problem, or I'm going to feel embarrassed as I share it. What do I do with that? How do I get past the nervousness around opening all the way up in therapy?
That's a great question. Wow, there's so much I want to say about this. We had a question early on that was related to this about how to engage with therapy, and we were talking about making sure that there's a good fit. And so that's the starting place too. The starting place is to make sure that there's a good fit. And what I mean by that is, after the first couple of sessions, I tell new clients this all the time. If after the first couple of sessions with me, they don't feel a click, they don't feel like themselves relaxing, they don't feel like in some ways I'm starting to get it, then I encourage clients to tell me that, because I need to refer them out to other people, because there needs to be that click. So that's the first thing to look for.
Absolutely.
And the second thing to remember is that you're in charge of your information. You get to open up, and you get to include a therapist in your journey, in your story, at a rate that feels comfortable to you and respectful to you. And therapists really respect that and want to support that. Therapists don't want to push you beyond where you want to go. Sometimes it's important to challenge ourselves to kind of move to our yoga edge, as the skillful instructors at Dragonfly say.
Absolutely.
But that's different than kind of forcing someone to go somewhere they're not ready.
Yeah.
So it's important for you to remember you're in charge of your life and the information about your life. And when you're ready to share it, you decide to share it. Nobody else has that power over you.
So, yeah, because I want to tell Xander, for me, when I'm in therapy, I like to come in and open the briefcase and pour it out, because that's me. But I know that's hard to do.
And that's not everybody.
That's not everybody.
Some people do come to therapy like that. Some people read a page at a time, or open up the book a page at a time. And the important thing is to do it in a way that you can do it, so you can start to engage in the process. And the right fit for you as a therapist that's going to help you do that.
That's beautiful. Big thanks to Dragonfly for helping us out, being a sponsor here. And check out the workshop page on the really great
Check out the workshop page.
workshops.
And the cool thing about our new website is all of the pictures that we took are pictures in and around our building. The first picture you're going to see on the website is a picture of the actual couch in my office.
Yes, this is the one you'll be sitting on.
The pictures on the workshop page are pictures of around our office, around downtown Fredericksburg.
Which is really beautiful. Yeah.
It really is beautiful. And remember, whatever you're doing, whatever's going on in your life, you're worth protecting your headspace, because when you create a peaceful home in your head, then that is when you are truly in the seat of your power.
Allison Sullivan and Associates Integrative Mental Health Team is located in beautiful, historic downtown Fredericksburg, Virginia, and at allisonsintegrativehealth.org. New and exciting workshops are available to you that will give you personal attention to meet your needs right where you are on your journey. Sign up for our newsletter to be the first to know when registration opens for workshops like Aromatherapy 101. Here's how you can discover to use aromatherapy to support your health. Did you know that a blend of frankincense, peppermint, and lemongrass supports wisdom, optimism, and it will help you release unhealthy attachments? This is where you can learn how to support your mental, emotional, and physical health with the Essential Oils workshops available to you monthly for no charge. Come meet the team. Schedule your session today for psychotherapy, hypnotherapy, yoga, and massage, and begin restoring yourself in mind, body, and spirit. If you'd like to call, the number is 540-907-0991 and online at allisonsintegrativehealth.org. As Allison always says, self-care will save your life. Let go and lean in.